My child, even the quietest moments can carry the greatest turning points, and this is one of them. There was no loud announcement, no dramatic sign for everyone to witness. Instead, something beautiful unfolded where only sincere hearts could recognize it. While you were simply taking one faithful step after another, someone connected to your future paused with tears in their eyes, not from sadness, but from a joy they had almost forgotten was possible. Don't skip, because what happened in that silent moment reaches much deeper than appearances ever could. Something important is waiting for you, and every word from here will gently uncover another piece of it. You may have believed your smallest choices went unnoticed, yet every act of patience, every quiet decision to keep kindness alive, every time you chose hope over discouragement was quietly writing a story that another heart had been praying to see. You never heard those prayers. You never saw the nights when someone whispered hopeful thoughts into the silence, asking that the person they were meant to walk beside would continue growing, continue believing, continue becoming exactly who they were created to be. And today, without realizing it, you answered one of those hopes. That is why joy became too overwhelming to hide. Not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because one unmistakable sign appeared, the sign that your path was finally moving in harmony with theirs. Isn't it remarkable how the most meaningful changes rarely arrive with noise? They arrive softly, almost unnoticed, until suddenly every small decision begins connecting like pieces of a picture that was always meant to exist. There is a reason your heart has felt different lately. Perhaps you've become more peaceful, more patient, more willing to release what no longer belongs in your future. Those quiet changes were never meaningless. They became the very answer another soul had been waiting for without even knowing exactly when it would come. Stay till the end, because this is only the beginning of something much larger than a single moment of happiness. Imagine someone looking toward tomorrow with renewed confidence simply because they sensed that you were no longer walking in circles. They didn't celebrate perfection. They celebrated progress. They celebrated the realization that your heart was becoming ready to receive everything they had quietly hoped to share one day. That realization became too beautiful to contain, and tears naturally followed, not tears of loss, but tears that whispered, the waiting was not in vain. Yet there is another part of this story that has not been revealed, a quiet detail that explains why this joyful moment happened exactly now and not sooner. When that hidden piece comes into the light, everything you've wondered about these recent changes will begin making sense in ways you never expected. A quiet certainty settled over everything at once, so gently that it would have been easy to overlook if your heart had not been learning how to notice the smallest miracles. Yet somewhere beyond your sight, someone could no longer hold back the emotion they had carried for so long. Their eyes filled with grateful tears because they finally realized the change they had hoped for was no longer a distant possibility, it was becoming reality. Don't skip, because the next layer of this story explains why this moment touched them more deeply than words ever could. They were never waiting for perfection. They were waiting for one unmistakable sign that your heart had begun moving with confidence instead of hesitation. Every quiet lesson you embraced, every peaceful decision you made, every moment you chose understanding over frustration created a ripple that reached far beyond what you imagined. Without sending a single message, you answered questions they had carried silently for what felt like an eternity. That is why their joy felt so overwhelming. It was the kind of joy that arrives when hope finally has something real to hold on to. There is something extraordinary about unseen progress. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't demand attention. It simply transforms everything from within until one day even those who have been patiently believing can no longer deny what they feel. And that was exactly what happened. They looked toward tomorrow with a calm they had never experienced before, because for the first time they sensed that your journey and theirs were no longer moving in separate directions. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. The beautiful part is that you never changed yourself to impress anyone. You simply kept growing into the person you were always capable of becoming. That authenticity became the answer to prayers they had whispered without ever expecting such a gentle response. In that quiet realization, tears became gratitude, gratitude became peace, and peace became the beginning of a brand new chapter neither of you could have imagined months ago. Yet as joyful as this moment was, it also awakened one surprising realization inside them. They remembered a single detail from the past, something they almost ignored that suddenly carried an entirely new meaning. That forgotten detail is about to connect every unanswered question, and when it finally does, you'll understand why this joyful moment could only happen now, and not a single day sooner. There was one small memory they could never fully explain, and today it returned with unexpected clarity. It wasn't a grand event or a dramatic conversation. It was a quiet impression, a simple moment they almost dismissed because it seemed too ordinary to matter. Yet now, looking back through new eyes, they realized that moment had been gently preparing both of you for everything unfolding now. Something important is waiting for you, so stay till the end, because this realization changes the meaning of every step that came before. They began to see that every delay had quietly protected something precious. Every season of waiting had shaped patience instead of disappointment, wisdom instead of haste, and hope instead of uncertainty. What once felt like unanswered questions slowly revealed themselves as carefully timed chapters. The tears they shed were not only for the joy of this moment, but for the understanding that nothing meaningful had truly been lost. Even the pauses had a purpose. Even the silence had been speaking in ways neither of you could hear until now. As they reflected on your journey, they smiled through those tears because they recognized something unmistakable within you. Your heart had become softer without becoming weaker. Your spirit had become steadier without losing its warmth. You had learned to carry peace into places where worry once lived, and that quiet transformation spoke louder than any promise ever could. It was never about saying the perfect words. It was about becoming the kind of person whose presence alone could bring comfort. That was the answer they had been hoping to witness. Don't skip, because the next part of this story holds a gentle surprise that even they did not expect. As their hearts settled, they found themselves imagining the conversations that had not yet happened, the shared laughter that had not yet echoed through ordinary days, and the simple moments that often become life's greatest treasures. They understood that true joy rarely arrives all at once. It unfolds one quiet step at a time, inviting grateful hearts to notice what has been growing all along. Yet just as peace began filling every corner of their thoughts, something completely unexpected caught their attention. It was a small detail from the present so subtle that most people would have overlooked it, but to them, it felt like the final piece of a beautiful puzzle. The moment they understood what that detail meant, everything changed again, and the reason will unfold in the next part. Just when it seemed every question had found its answer, another quiet revelation began to unfold. It did not arrive with urgency or demand attention. It simply rested in the background, waiting for the perfect moment to be noticed. And when they finally recognized it, their heart became still in a way they had never experienced before. Don't skip, because what they discovered next was not something extraordinary because of its size, but because of its meaning. It revealed that the hope they had carried for so long had been growing stronger every single day without either of you fully realizing it. They understood that the greatest answers are often hidden inside ordinary moments. A kind word offered without expecting anything in return. A decision to remain patient when rushing would have been easier. A quiet act of faith that no one applauded. These were the moments they had been praying would become part of your life. Not because they wanted you to be someone different, but because they longed to see the beautiful qualities that had always been within you shine without fear or hesitation. And now, one by one, those qualities were becoming impossible to ignore. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As gratitude settled over them, they stopped asking, "Will this ever happen?" Instead, a different question filled their heart: how did everything begin changing so gently? The answer came softly. It wasn't one dramatic event. It was the collection of countless small choices that slowly transformed your path. Every peaceful step created another bridge. Every hopeful decision brought tomorrow a little closer. Without realizing it, you had been building a future that could finally be shared instead of imagined. Their tears slowly turned into quiet smiles as they pictured the moments still waiting ahead. Not perfect moments, but real ones filled with understanding, encouragement, laughter, and the comfort of knowing that two hearts can grow stronger together when they continue choosing hope. That thought alone filled them with a joy words could barely express. Yet one final realization remained. There was a reason this overwhelming happiness arrived on this particular day. It wasn't random, and it wasn't simply coincidence. A small conversation, taking place where you could not yet see, was about to connect every hopeful feeling into one unforgettable moment. When that conversation reaches its turning point, you'll understand why this chapter is only the beginning of an even more meaningful story. No one could have predicted that such a quiet conversation would carry so much meaning. It wasn't planned to become unforgettable. It began with simple words, thoughtful pauses, and honest reflections. Yet as each sentence unfolded, one truth became impossible to ignore. The hope they had guarded so carefully was no longer something they had to imagine, it had become something they could finally believe. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you, and this gentle moment is leading toward it one step at a time. As they spoke, they found themselves returning to the same realization again and again. The person they had been praying for was no longer defined by yesterday's uncertainties. They could sense a new steadiness, a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. It wasn't loud, yet it filled every corner of their heart with peace. They smiled through grateful tears because they understood that true transformation is rarely dramatic. It grows quietly until one day everyone can feel its presence. There was another detail that touched them even more deeply. They realized you had not been chasing approval or recognition. You had simply continued moving forward with sincerity, allowing each lesson to shape you instead of discourage you. That was the answer they had been hoping to witness all along. It wasn't about reaching a perfect destination. It was about becoming someone whose kindness, patience, and hope remained steady through every season. Don't skip, because the next realization carries a meaning neither of you expected. While reflecting on everything that had changed, they noticed something beautiful. The future no longer felt distant. Instead of wondering whether your paths would ever come into harmony, they began to picture ordinary moments shared together, simple conversations, peaceful evenings, genuine laughter, and the quiet comfort of walking through life with someone who truly understands your heart. Those gentle thoughts filled them with a joy that words could hardly express. Then, just as the conversation seemed complete, someone shared one final observation. It was brief, almost whispered, yet it caused everyone to pause. The room grew wonderfully still because they all recognized the same thing at once. The most meaningful chapter had not already happened, it was only beginning. And the very next step waiting ahead will reveal why this joyful moment was only the first sign of something even more beautiful unfolding. For a few peaceful moments, no one felt the need to say another word. Sometimes the deepest understanding arrives in silence, and this was one of those rare moments. Every heart in that room seemed to recognize the same quiet truth without anyone having to explain it. The journey had never been about reaching a single joyful moment. It had always been about becoming ready to receive what that joy was leading toward. Don't skip, because the next realization brings everything you've heard so far into an even clearer light. One by one, they reflected on the path that had brought them here. They remembered the seasons that felt slow, the days that seemed ordinary, and the moments that appeared to pass without changing anything at all. Yet now they could see that every one of those moments had been gently preparing something lasting. Nothing had been wasted. Every delay had deepened appreciation. Every lesson had strengthened character. Every quiet step had been guiding two stories closer together in ways that could only be understood now. As these thoughts settled, the tears that had once flowed from overwhelming emotion became tears of gratitude. There was no longer a need to wonder whether hope had been worthwhile. The answer was already resting peacefully before them. They realized that the greatest gift was not simply finding someone to walk beside, but becoming the kind of person who could share that journey with wisdom, patience, and a heart that had learned the value of every small blessing. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. They closed their eyes for a moment and pictured the days ahead not as a perfect story without challenges, but as a life filled with quiet victories, gentle encouragement, shared laughter, and the comfort of knowing that every meaningful beginning is built on countless unseen moments of growth. That vision brought an unshakable peace, the kind that doesn't rush ahead but faithfully waits for each new day to unfold. Then, just as everyone believed the story had reached its most beautiful point, another unexpected detail quietly emerged. It was something so simple that it could easily have been overlooked, yet it carried the power to confirm everything they had been feeling from the very beginning. When that final piece comes into view, you'll understand why their joyful tears were not the ending of this story, they were the first glimpse of an even brighter chapter waiting just beyond this moment. The quiet detail revealed itself when no one was searching for it. It arrived with the gentle certainty that the most meaningful moments often carry a simple realization that asked for nothing except an open heart. As soon as they understood it, another wave of grateful tears filled their eyes, because they finally saw that this beautiful story had never depended on perfect timing alone. It had been growing through every unseen moment of faith, every patient decision, and every hopeful step you continued taking, even when you could not yet see where the path was leading. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you, and this final piece brings a new light to everything that has come before. They smiled as they remembered all the times they almost gave up wondering. How many quiet evenings had they spent hoping that one day your heart would discover the same peace they had been praying for? How many times had they whispered silent gratitude for progress that no one else could see? Today, those questions no longer needed answers. The evidence was already unfolding. Your quiet growth had become impossible to overlook, not because it demanded attention, but because it radiated naturally through the way you carried yourself with kindness, patience, and quiet confidence. There was something wonderfully reassuring about that realization. It reminded them that lasting joy is never built in a single extraordinary moment. It is shaped through ordinary days filled with faithful choices that slowly transform everything. They understood that the happiest chapters are rarely rushed. They unfold gently, allowing every lesson to become part of a stronger foundation. That understanding filled their heart with peace unlike anything they had ever known. Stay till the end, because this story is revealing something even deeper. As they looked toward tomorrow, they no longer imagined a distant dream. Instead, they pictured countless simple moments waiting to be lived, encouraging words after long days, quiet walks filled with meaningful conversations, shared smiles that needed no explanation, and the comforting feeling of knowing that two hearts had arrived at this place through patience rather than hurry. Those ordinary moments suddenly felt more precious than any grand celebration. Then one final thought settled into their heart with quiet clarity. They realized that the joy they felt today was not only about what had already happened. It was also about what was quietly preparing to unfold next. Somewhere, another gentle step was already being arranged, another meaningful encounter was drawing closer, another chapter was waiting to open at exactly the right moment. And when that chapter begins, you'll understand why today's joyful tears were only the opening notes of an even more beautiful story still waiting to be told. A gentle expectation began to replace every remaining question. It wasn't the kind that rushes ahead or demands immediate answers. It was peaceful, steady, and quietly confident, as though every heartbeat had finally learned to trust the journey. Somewhere, the one who had wept with gratitude found themselves smiling without even realizing it. The joy they carried no longer came from wondering what might happen. It came from recognizing that something meaningful was already unfolding, one quiet moment at a time. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you, and this next chapter reveals why hope has become stronger than ever. As the day continued, they noticed themselves paying attention to little things they once overlooked. A familiar melody. A kind conversation. A peaceful sunrise. Simple moments suddenly felt extraordinary because they reflected the same quiet transformation they had witnessed in you. They understood that lasting happiness rarely arrives as one unforgettable event. Instead, it gently gathers through countless ordinary moments until one day the heart realizes it has been surrounded by blessings all along. They reflected on every reason they had continued believing, even during seasons when nothing seemed to be changing. Looking back, they realized those silent days had never been empty. They had been filled with unseen preparation. Every lesson had shaped wisdom. Every pause had strengthened patience. Every hopeful choice had quietly brought this story one step closer to where it was always meant to be. That realization filled them with a gratitude deeper than words could ever fully express. Stay till the end, because this is where another beautiful truth begins to appear. They no longer imagined the future as something uncertain waiting in the distance. Instead, they felt it gently drawing near with every passing day. They pictured conversations filled with honesty, moments of encouragement shared without effort, and peaceful days where trust would continue growing naturally. Those thoughts no longer felt like distant dreams. They felt like quiet promises unfolding at exactly the right pace. Just when they believed their heart had settled completely, one final realization arrived with surprising clarity. The greatest answer had never been hidden in a dramatic moment. It had always been waiting inside one simple truth: when two hearts continue growing with patience, gratitude, and hope, every new beginning becomes more meaningful than the one before it. And as that truth settled gently within them, they sensed that the next chapter was already drawing closer, carrying a beautiful surprise that neither of you could yet fully see but both of you were finally ready to receive. Without any announcement, the atmosphere around this story became lighter, almost as if every unanswered question had quietly stepped aside to make room for something far more meaningful. The one who had carried hope for so long no longer looked ahead with uncertainty. Instead, they carried a peaceful smile that came from knowing the most important change had already begun, not around you, but within you. That quiet transformation was the very answer they had been praying would one day arrive. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you, and this chapter reveals why everything now feels different. As they reflected on the path that brought both of you here, they realized that every unexpected turn had gently protected this moment. If anything had happened sooner, one of you might not have recognized its value. If everything had unfolded exactly as imagined, neither heart would have grown into the person it needed to become. Suddenly, even the waiting felt like a gift. Every pause had added depth. Every lesson had added wisdom. Every quiet season had made this joy richer than it could have been any other way. Their thoughts drifted toward the simple moments still waiting ahead. They imagined sharing ordinary days that would quietly become unforgettable, not because of grand celebrations, but because of the peace found in simply walking through life together. A conversation that brings comfort after a long day. A shared smile that says more than words ever could. A moment of laughter that turns into a treasured memory. They understood that these gentle experiences are what truly build lasting happiness, and their heart overflowed with gratitude knowing those moments were no longer impossible to imagine. Don't skip, because another beautiful realization is beginning to unfold. They suddenly remembered something they had once whispered in hope: when the right time comes, let us both recognize it. That quiet wish returned to them with surprising clarity. Looking at everything that had changed, they realized the answer had not arrived with noise or spectacle. It had arrived through peace. The kind of peace that settles into the heart so naturally that it becomes impossible to mistake for anything else. As evening approached, they found themselves looking toward tomorrow with quiet excitement instead of anxious wondering. They no longer asked whether the story would continue. They simply trusted that each new day would reveal another meaningful piece at exactly the right moment. And just before they closed their eyes, one gentle thought brought another grateful smile. the tears of joy that began this journey were never meant to be the greatest surprise. There is still one heartfelt revelation waiting ahead, one that will bring every quiet step, every patient season, and every hopeful prayer together into a conclusion more beautiful than either of you could have imagined.